All right, folks, welcome back to the show. It's HMW Sports Talk Live. Good evening. If you're just joining us, this is segment number 2. Got 3 more segments to go with you folks tonight. I'm Craig Shelton from HMW. That's HoustonMediaWatch.com. Go check out the blog at HoustonMediaWatch.com or just Google up HMW. That's the acronym. And you'll find us there. And I encourage you to always check in on HMW a couple of times a day at least. We are Houston's media watchdogs. Patrick Creighton joins us back in studio today, his second appearance on the show, and Patrick is a favorite of mine around town. New York guy doing this thing in Houston, making it happen. And Angelo Lawford joins us now. Angelo Lawford from HMW joins us in studio, and we'll keep it rolling. We were talking free agency, Texans. We kind of got into a little bit of conversation in regard to Rick Smith and Gary Kubiak. Patrick, in a very free-flowing manner, basically said that Rick Smith separated himself from Gary Kubiak. I don't know that that's the truth. I think I have more of an issue with where's this precedent that the Texans set that's so much different than so many other teams have done forever, right or wrong, where they fire a coach and the GM stays. Where's the, not from Patrick. There's no venom with Patrick's conversation. But there's been venom from many in the media, none other than Stephanie Stradley, a good friend of mine, who we've had our disagreements about this very topic, and we were very vocal in public with it on Twitter discussing it, and we remain cool. Steph's my girl, but we just see things differently. I don't understand why there's so much venom in attacking Rick Smith. If you just think he hasn't done a good job as a person in the media, then say that and report that. But when the venomous attacks take place, I'm sorry, but it just makes me wonder, where is that coming from? Don't you make me tell you where I think it's coming from. Don't make me pull out my church lady voice on you. I'll explain some things to you. All right, then, we'll keep it rolling. Free agents. Let's run through some of the names that the Texans that have been a part of, should we call it Exodus 2014? Can we just give it a catchy phrase? Isn't that
Purge.
What we do? The Purge.
I've called it the Purge.
The Purge 2014. Brian Bramer. Now that's one. Brian Bramer signs with the Eagles. A lot of mushrooms, a lot of meth up in Philadelphia. Brian Bramer should do well there. What do you think, Angelo?
Well, you know what's funny? I remember earlier in the week when you did a thing on social media, and I remember you brought up a pretty good point that and I'm sure you're about to do it. But when you run down the checklist of players that are on this past Texans roster that have gone elsewhere, it makes you wonder how inferior the roster actually was. You know, to have so many players depart and go to other teams.
Yeah. Well, my point was more so was that people. I don't know if you saw this, Pat. A lot of people raising hell about these players that are leaving the Texans in mass exodus. But a lot of these are the same people that say that Rick Smith put together a horrible roster,
right,
but they're bitching about the players that are leaving. So I was just one of those deals.
Who's bitching about Brian Braman leaving?
Well, it wasn't just Brian Braman. You know, it was a collective deal.
What I think is interesting is Braman becomes the 7th member of the Texans to join that Philadelphia team.
I was just
Philadelphia South, huh?
There's a pipeline going
Houston
from Texas
North
to Philly, just like there's a pipeline right now going from Seattle to Jacksonville.
Graham resigns with the Texans. Joe Mays. I thought Joe Mays overall did a decent job for the Texans, and I know a lot of people, you start judging them what they did here as starters, but when you think about what they were brought here to be, and Joe Mays was a guy that you expected to see starting time next to Brian Cushing, but when Brian Cushing is not there, you know, all that stuff gets polarized because the way Phillips was not able to run his defense in the same manner. Those guys are not impactful at the line of scrimmage and in trash. And Wade Smith can't call the same defense when you take out a guy like Brian Cushing. So now Darryl Sharpton and Joe Mays, you know, your two Mike linebackers, all of a sudden, just a couple of guys. You don't have, you know, your best scenario is to rotate those guys with this all-world sort of type of middle linebacker playing next to him in that 3-4 defense. Cushion goes out. Now you got those two guys playing next to each other most of the time, and Dobbins in the mix as well. And it just wasn't, you don't get the same appreciation. But I think in ideal circumstances, when the Texans were able to use Mays for what he was brought in to do and on special teams, I thought Mays played well for the Texans overall. I thought overall over the last couple of years, Tim Dobbins was a good signing out of Miami for the Texans. Darryl Sharpton wasn't going to play. Darryl Sharpton played pretty well last season for what he is, but he's not a guy that was going to play in a Romeo Crennel. Folks, get ready. I tweeted this out during the week. Patrick, Richard, you guys know, when we walk in the Texans locker room over the next couple of years, the physical makeup of what we see as athletes in the Texans locker room will look a lot different than what it looked last year and the year before, because you won't see undersized linebackers for the most part once this team is remade and this roster's turned over under a Romeo Crennel defensive scheme. Romeo likes bigger guys in his front seven, Patrick.
Romeo plays, the traditional big 3-4 defense, which means, 330-pound nose tackle in the middle, big middle linebackers, guys with speed on the outside.
Two-gap technique, playing zero technique over the top of the center.
Wade
responsible for both gaps, A-gaps on both sides. Is a different type of guy to play that.
Wade played more of a hybrid 3-4. He used more guys with speed in smaller places, and they tried to run more stunts and overload different sides and things like that. And, part of that is they wound up playing a lot of man on the outside, and last year playing all that man crushed them because they couldn't cover it. For whatever reason, Jonathan Joseph did not have a good season. We've seen him have better years before. Last year he struggled. Kareem Jackson, you want to talk about a guy who probably wishes he was in Seattle.
Well, I think
in Seattle they were jamming guys all the way down the field all year long and didn't get called. Kareem, man, every time he breathed on a guy, he got a flag.
Do you think Jonathan, who got healthier later in the year, do you think Jonathan Joseph and Kareem Jackson's play had anything to do with what makes the guys on the back end in Seattle so good? Is that pass rush up front? You give any credence to that? Because I do. I think the Texans have a better pass rush as they did 2 years ago when everybody looked pretty good and darn good, or either great in the secondary. Yeah, I think it has a little to do with it.
I will tell you, having a big pass rush masks an awful lot of things. The Giants won 2 Super Bowls because they had a pass rush. It's not because they could cover anybody, because the Giants haven't been able to cover anybody in 20 years.
Agreed.
All right, the Giants' ability to have a pass rush, and specifically a fourth quarter pass rush, all right, that is why they won Super Bowls. They got healthy at the right time, they got hot at the right time, and they could overrun your offensive line even in the fourth quarter because they couldn't cover anyone.
Look at the New York guy go getting all intense and everything when he's talking about the Giants. Angelo, it's pretty clear that the Texans can't solve every issue in the 2014 draft. They just can't do it. So I'll start with you. What would you say the 2 position needs for the Texans that should be addressed in free agency? The 2 most important position needs, in your view only, that the Texans should address in free agency, even if you think that they should draft a guy at that position and go after one in free agency. But I would still like you to prioritize the 2 positions you believe.
Well, I'll start with backup quarterback. I think if they can find one in free agency, that would be a plus. And maybe nose tackle would be the second one that comes to mind. But I don't know. Depends. I guess Vince Wilfork might be available, is available. I'm still kind of not certain about that.
He's available. I mean, 33, 34 years old, coming off that injury. That would be interesting. You know. And I don't know if it's interesting in terms of him playing here. Just it would be interesting to me to see if the Texans went that route, because if they go that route, to me that says we honestly believe what we said at the press conference when we introduced Bill O'Brien, when Bob McNair stood up there and said this is a quick fix, basically. That means, if they sign a guy like Woolfolk, that means you really believe that. You really believe this is a quick fix. But if you don't in my opinion, waste money going after a guy who I like in Woolfolk, I just don't think that you're that team, and I don't think that he's your guy. You don't spend that money because you're not ready to win yet this year. So I don't think that's the guy. I think you go for a younger guy and somebody you can develop over the next several years. We also put this question out on Facebook and on Twitter, and I'll read some of the comments, and Patrick, we'll start with you to comment on it. This one comes from @Moselle2015 on Twitter. He says defensive end, losing Antonio Smith creates a hole at the defensive end spot, and also quarterback is a very important position to solidify. A quarterback that can be consistent in moving the chains and make good decisions. A sleeper of mine also is at the tackle position, offensive tackle. So reading his entire comment, sounds like he's more for addressing the quarterback position as a starter in free agency. I'll let you address it from that angle. Do the Texans, because if you're going after a starter in free agency, that can mean a couple different things. Doesn't mean you don't still draft a rookie, but it could mean you drafted Clowney. So
there is no starter to get outside of Michael Vick, and if you want Michael Vick, who's Mr. Happy Turnover, to be running your franchise,
and happy injury.
That too.
Yeah.
All right, but the guys between the concussions and the turnovers, Michael Vick, the guy that you want running your offense? No, it isn't. And after Michael Vick, you look at what's out there. I can sum it up for you in 2 words: hot garbage. There is nothing out there on free agency that you want to touch.
As cold garbage?
Let me put it this way. If you actually look at what's available after Michael Vick, Josh Freeman, Sean Hill, Jason Campbell.
Derek Anderson's still out there.
Oh.
Don't you forget
Let
Derek
me tell
Anderson.
you something. With those names, all right, God, don't strike me with lightning. I'd rather actually have Matt Schaub.
I'm thinking David Carr.
David Carr wasn't even in football last year. He wasn't even good enough to hold Eli Manning's clipboard last year.
Matt Schaub wasn't in football last year.
Well, he was. He collected a nice
Not
paycheck.
really.
He got paid.
The other caveat with the Michael Vick conversation is you're talking about a quick read, quick decision offense with Bill O'Brien. If what we hear is going to hold pace and what we see in New England, I mean, 3-step, make a decision, boom, 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 boom. I don't think that's Michael Vick. Michael Vick doesn't read defenses at that level of efficiency. I just don't think, as much as I like Michael Vick, I don't think it's a good fit for Houston because I don't think he fits Bill O'Brien's type of offense where you've got to be really smart.
No, and that's
Michael
exactly
Vick doesn't
it.
have a high quarterback IQ. And that's just being honest.
The smart part is where he's going to fail, because it's not just Brady gets up to the line, reads his defense, makes his adjustments. Brady can actually change route trees and route groupings, and you have to be able to do that in Bill O'Brien's offense, right? It's not like the Kubiak. Okay, you got this play and that play,
No.
and
Well, everything's
one.
based on formations and not so much.
He's allowed to change his. He's going to be expected to change his formations, change route trees, change individual as well as group route trees, and he's got to make these adjustments to the line of scrimmage. That's not Michael Vick.
No doubt about it. How much time I got? Am I like on a 10-second countdown? I'm probably on a 10-second countdown because the cameraman is going, Craig! Folks, we'll be right back.